everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Come Fly With Me Australia. I recently had a comment on one of my videos asking me to do some content on how much it costs to learn how to fly. So today I thought I would touch base with the flying school that I learnt to fly at in 2018, which is Fly Now Redcliffe. And the owner, Mal Oakes, who gave me my first flying lessons, has been kind enough to give us his time today and give us a rundown on what the costs are for 2026 to get your pilot certificate. So let's go have a chat with him now. Right, we're down here looking at all of Mal's toys. He's going to show us his collection here. Here's the man, all his toys.
Technam P92 Eaglet, so G5. Then we got one over here that was a forerunner to it, which is 7600, which is my favourite. I've owned my own flying school now for 14 years and it now has 9,500 hours on it. Wow. And it's about to come up for a new engine very shortly. They cruise on 100 knots, land stall speeds about 44 knots and 39 knots with full flap. They're a neat plane to fly. Yeah. I am biased, but I collect them. But the reason I collect them is because they're good.
Yeah.
So
very easy to fly, these ones, yeah. Very light on the controls.
They're very responsive aircraft. They're a light aircraft, but very responsive. It's a pilot's aeroplane. Some people, everybody likes the first plane they've ever flown in, but these are a good plane. Anyway, I'll stop raving about it. We've got another one over there. We've got another two in the back. So as an initial trainer, they're a pretty good aircraft. Technam are an Italian company and have a very good reputation for building quality aircraft. They're a bit expensive, but they're very good. And to try and replace these, they'd be somewhere in the vicinity of 300,000 Aussie dollars. So they get a service every 50 hours. They get a minor service at 50 hours and a major service at 100 hours where they check all the cables and controls, and they've got a list of things that need checking, and then at 2,000 hours we pull the engine out and put a new one in. So I've got 3 new engines to go in this year.
Oh, that's going to be expensive.
Yeah, well, it was $118,000 for the 3 engines.
Wow.
But anyway, I've got to keep them going, and they're good aircraft. They have very good authority in flying. So the reason we're standing on the ground today is because of a strong crosswind, and crosswinds these handle very well. So
yes, that's true. I have done some pretty serious crosswinds. 15-knot crosswind is pretty easy in these aircraft, right?
It's capable. It's the demonstrated ability of the aircraft is 15 knots.
Yes.
That means we don't guarantee it after that, but I can tell you I've flown in some crosswinds that you just are pretty amazing, and you bring it in and it'll do it.
Yes,
it'll
it does.
obey your instructions straight away.
Yeah, you're coming in sideways and it just, it's very easy to just straighten up just before you touch down, and it's just,
It's magic.
It is magic. I love these planes. I'm very attached to them. I felt sad when I left flying the Technams because they're such good aircraft.
These are the stepping stone aircraft if you want to fly the heavy aircraft. I've had other students come along, learn in here, and then progress on and do their PPL or CPL, commercial pilot's license. And a couple of years ago, one of my students sent me a text, and I was standing here on the ground, not flying at the time, and said, "Are you in the circuit?" I said, "No, I'm on the ground." And he says, "I'm flying over in my Chinook helicopter." And he came over, and Brian waving to me in his Chinook helicopter.
How cool is that?
Another one who's progressed on and flies PC-12s and King Airs for flying doctor service. Another one is flying Dash 8s. Now, I didn't teach them what to do to fly their commercial aircraft, but their beginning flight training started here. Yeah. And some of them were 13 and 14 years old when they first started their training. And it gives you good basic skills. So they're an excellent plane to fly, economical. Nothing's cheap in flying, but economical by comparison to heavier aircraft. And great planes to fly and have fun for learning to fly. And even when you've got your certificate, fly off into the blue yonder and pick a nice place to go, like the 12 Apostles or Lake Ayers Rock or somewhere, wherever you want to go.
Just wanted to make a special mention about this aircraft here, the 7600. I did my very first solo in this plane in 2018, so I am very attached to it. It's a great little aircraft, and come check it out. Oh, I feel like 2018 was a while ago, wasn't it?
It was a while ago.
I feel like nothing's changed, right? Nothing's changed. Beautiful little plane, everything that you need. You got the 6-pack here. Yeah, great plane. Today we're sitting with Mal Oakes from Fly Now Redcliffe, which is where I learnt to fly, and Mal was actually my instructor all those years ago in 2018. So yeah, he's been kind enough to give me his time to talk about how much it costs to learn how to fly.
For a recreational pilot certificate in Australia, it is a minimum requirement of 20 hours at the moment. It's going to increase to 25. It's a minimum. Nobody does it. Realistically, you should expect somewhere between 40 to 50 hours to consolidate the learning you've done. If you're older, it'll take slightly longer. If you're younger, it'll take less. I've signed off people at 35 hours. So what you should do is budget how much is that 40 to 50 hours going to cost me. Now, I charge $375 for dual instruction. The dual instruction is per hour at $375. So we allow 2 hours for each lesson, whereby we go through a briefing, a pre-flight, look at the weather, prep the aircraft, make sure that we're prepared and the weather's good, and then go out, come back. And that 1 hour flight would have taken a total of 2 hours in time. In that 2 hours, you will get certain things that you'll get to repeat, like knowing how to pre-flight, check the fuel, check the weather. We demonstrate that to you and show you what to do as far as prior to you getting into your aircraft. Then you sit down with the instructor and go through a pre-flight briefing, and you'll plan your air exercise of what you intend to do and how you're going to achieve that goal today. Now, the instructors are trained to be able to do that, and we want to be able to do that in the minimum amount of time. How much should you budget for at this time? The year 26, we're looking at, if you were to budget for 40 hours, you're talking $15,000. If you take 50 hours, you're talking about $18,500. If you include your cross-country endorsement, which is a further 10 hours of dual instruction plus 2 hours of solo, that's the minimum. I do about 15, 16 hours of dual of total in the cross-country endorsement. Once you have that by the way, the cost will be about $5,500 in that area. Now, this excludes landing fees, which the council charge, and excludes theory books, etc. And so anyway, once you've done that, you've got your navigation rating. You can do flights like recently down to the 12 Apostles. Yeah. So ask, what's the best way to 12 Apostles? Point south.
No, Mal was amazing because he helped me with the flight plan, because he's done a lot of flying around Australia. So I just came straight to him.
Including the 12 Apostles.
Well, he's done it all. And I'm like, where did you land? Because I wanted recommendations of good places to land and so forth, and had good facilities. So we sat down, he gave me his time, and he did the whole flight plan. I shouldn't say that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't do the whole, I just gave you hints.
Yeah, he gave me hints. And we made small little adjustments. I think we didn't land at one of the places. But yeah, so I'm an ongoing student. Even though all these years I'm still coming here. He gave me his tie-down kit for the plane, let me borrow that. So I'm very thankful. And my hangar's just on the other side. So we're always, around running things by him and so forth. So yeah. And the
RV-14 in the corner.
Oh, yes, I was going to mention that. So that plane at the back of of my hangar that sits in there is Mal's. So he's in that syndicate.
Well, it's partly mine.
Yeah, in a syndicate.
So that's my new toy, blasting around at 170 knots in an RV-14, which you can do. You can build your basic skills in a recreational pilot certificate, and that's a Recreational Australia, Aviation Australia qualification. That allows you to fly airplanes up to 760 kilograms. If you want to fly heavier aircraft, you can then convert that to your recreational pilot's license, which is a CASA license. And then if you want to use that, you can use that as a stepping stone for your private pilot's license, which I got 40 years ago. So then with the private pilot's license, you can fly airplanes up to 5,700 kilograms, and you don't need a private pilot's license unless you're going to be flying heavier aircraft, flying at night, or flying instrument. For a recreational pilot's license, which is an aircraft up to 1.5 tonnes, 1,500 kilograms, you don't need that. But it's a matter of what your goal is. Originally, you may not know exactly what you want, and most people's ambitions are bigger than their wallet. That's just a fact of flying. Aviation can consume as much money as you can throw at it.
Yeah.
And don't worry, I've spent more than my fair share.
But we just don't like to think about it, right? We just we love what we do, love flying, so we just pay the bills. It's just,
So having a syndicate share allows you to fly a modern aircraft that's got all the bells and whistles without having to fork out all the money for that and having to fork out all the money for all the bills. So I happily fly around in my quarter share of the RV14, which I take every 3/4 of other people's share, but I come back and I don't have to pay all the bills.
Yes, so do I. I do all the flying with the RV12 as well. We're a bit greedy with our syndicates.
We're just addicted to flying.
Actually, one of the questions I wanted to go back to, Mal, when we're talking about learning to fly is how often do you think people should in my case, I actually was working overseas and I came back and I had a certain chunk of time, I think it was a month, and I went from first flying lesson to first solo in 3 weeks, and I flew every day that I could, weather depending, and I really think that helped because I was flying every day, sometimes even twice a day. So what do you recommend to people to get?
This comes back to your own lifestyle. So if you can only come once a week or once a fortnight or whatever, you've got to nut that out. What you need to do is be consistent at coming. So if you can fly once a week, that's good, because you're going to get a day where you can't go because the weather's just not good enough, which means it'll be 2 weeks before your next lesson. However, if it's once a fortnight and you miss a lesson due to weather, it might be a month before you go between lessons. Now, there might be other things that you have to do in life, looking after kids or other people or whatever it is that you may do. But it's a good idea to have a concentrated time span and make sure that that goal is focused, because it will take you less time if you fly more often. So if it's possible, it's great to do it full time. I did my initial PPL, I did back in 1986, and I did that over a period of 6 months. I then later on, to get my recreational pilot certificate, I was in Mount Isa and flew down to Brisbane, and I did that in a matter of 10 days. It was a big, hectic 10 days.
Yeah, but it works well. Like if you can, you're focused, you're flying all day, really, morning, afternoon.
There's nothing else to worry about.
Yeah, and
if you've allotted that time, and whether it's your holidays or long service leave or whatever it may be, you can do it in a shorter space of time. Now, the most important thing when you do this is to think about this as a perishable skill, so that you need to continue flying to consolidate your skills that you paid a lot of money for and took time and effort into doing. So there's the pilot certificate, and then there's the navigation if you want it, but you don't have to, and then you need to be able to budget for flying on a regular basis. So where you consolidate your skills is that time after you've got your license and you're still practicing the good habits and disciplines that an instructor has taught you, and that repetition will hardwire you for the rest of your life. If you leave a gap in between it, it will start to fade.
And I'll just interject here because I'm a prime example of that. So I did my first solo with Mal in 2018, and then I went overseas pretty much the next day for work to the Philippines, and I was there for like a year. I came back and got my passenger endorsement, and I almost had to start again. I had to do it all again because I hadn't consolidated what I learned. So then got my passenger endorsement, and then I went overseas for another 3 years, had kids, was in Saudi, Kenya, came back, and I felt like I forgot how to fly, to be honest, baby brain and whatnot, and I had to start again. So I think that what Mal pointed out is a really good point, that you've just got to come consistently, otherwise you're going back. And I invested a lot more money again and again and again to get the skill up. So now I've been flying for 3 years now straight, and I really feel it's
one of the best
second
things.
nature.
One of the best things is, because you've got that syndicate share, it makes it more affordable and allows you to consolidate that.
Yes,
so,
I can fly.
Not everyone has got the money to buy a syndicate share. People can hire my aircraft for $100 less when the instructor's not with them.
So is that $270 an hour? Is it
$275
for a private hire? Yeah.
So private hire $275. So the first time you go on an aeroplane, we call it a trial instruction flight. I make sure that people get a complete briefing on the effects of controls and demonstrate how those controls are operated, and you get hands-on flying. If you're flying with an instructor that's not getting your hands on, you're not learning to fly. So what we do is we make sure the student gets hands-on flying, and we demonstrate so that you can be on the controls and the instructor can be on the controls and demonstrating how the aircraft works. And then then as you go through, you're starting to get a comprehension of how that works and start to get a feel for the aircraft. And that's what we want to do, is develop a feedback and feel so that we're progressing forwards in our skills. Now, each successive lesson builds onto the next one. So you start with effects of controls, then you go straight and level, which is trying to keep the airplane pointed in the same direction at the same height. And you think that's easy. Yeah, well, it is and it isn't. We do that at various speeds. We'll do that at 100 knots, then 80 knots, and then once you start to get the hang of doing 180, those two separate actions of or those two disciplines of what you're trying to achieve. Then the next lesson after that is climbing and descending. Then we go into turns, then stalls, which is not necessarily an engine stalling. It is getting too slow to fly properly, and the air separates from the top of the wing.
I remember doing those with you, Mal, and my hands getting sweaty, and I get, I hated practicing stalls because you really have that sick feeling in your stomach when you know it's coming, and he's pushing you into a circumstance that you know is not right, and
then consolidation exercise to make sure that those building blocks are good enough or to a standard that you can then start doing circuits. Circuits is takeoff and landing and repetition. So the purpose of a circuit is to have a flow of traffic that everybody agrees with, and we're all going the same way because it's a one-way street, and you want to be able to set yourself up accurately at the beginning of the runway at the right airspeed to use the rest of the runway to land on. Now we do what we call touch and goes, where you come in and set it up and land and do a touch and go, and you take off and you do it again. When you first do that, it can be a little bit overwhelming because you're then trying to exercise all the skills that you've already built up and not necessarily built to a standard that you're happy with or even the instructor's happy with. But repetition and minor tweaking will then help develop those skills until you get to the point that you can go solo. Solo is where the instructor is satisfied that you can handle the aircraft on your own to be able to take off and come back and land. Prior to doing that, they'll be briefing you and demonstrating to you certain emergency procedures. Not that that's likely to happen, but we prepare you for that anyway. So the engine failures after takeoff or glide approaches should the engine not produce full power. And we go through all those procedures and brief you on what you can expect to happen when you go solo. Now, the airplane behaves itself exactly as it always does, apart from the fact that you just lost 80 kilos or whatever your instructor weighs.
And it does make a big difference.
It does make a big difference because your aircraft pops off the ground. In a light sport aircraft pops off. The goal is to get you to 2 hours solo circuits. Now that may happen in several lessons, not just one or two, because what the instructor has to do is get you back to speed and making sure that you're in the groove and performing well enough to do it on your own. So it might be 2 or 3 or 4 lessons before you build up 2 hours worth of solo circuits. Now the purpose of that is to just consolidate that you can take off and land on your own. Then we start teaching you how to leave the circuit and go out to the training area to make the appropriate calls, fly at the correct height, and to be able to know where you're going and what you're doing around the training area. When the training area for this particular flying school and this airfield is north of here, and it contains Bribie Island and areas Caboolture and the Glasshouse Mountains, which is quite scenic, which is a great place to fly. But everybody needs to know the right procedures and the emergency procedures, etc., so that we then start teaching you how to leave the circuit, come back in the circuit, know where you are. It's an exercise called pilotage, reading the map and knowing where you are, how to make the right radio calls, but also deal with emergencies should you have something like that happen. Now the purpose of that is to build up a total of 5 hours solo, including your 2 hours solo circuits plus a further 3 hours of solo area solo, and then we start to continue on with doing more advanced training from that. Now once you've completed the syllabus, then it's up to you to pass all the theory exams, and there are 4 multiple choice theory exams. And those 4 multiple choice theory exams, once they've done and you've completed the syllabus and we've done a pre-test checking that you're up to the standard required for a issue of a pilot certificate, then we take you for a test and then go out, and if you pass the test, you've got your pilot certificate, and then you can hire the plane on your own for $100 an hour less.
So that's it. I hope we answered your question to the viewer who asked how much it costs to learn how to fly. So yeah, in 2026, at 15,000 up to 20,000, would you say? For
the basic certificate, for your recreational pilot certificate, somewhere between 15 and 20,000. For your cross-country endorsement, an extra 5.5, 6.